Serious? What happened that time you saw the fury of a patient man? Me and a few of my friends used to frequent a pub in my hometown. It was a small place in the town center. A traditional English pub, complete with attractive barmaid and consistent regulars, us included. Every time we were in there, a guy would be sat at the bar, on his own, with a half of bitter. He'd occasionally join the banter, but was never loud or drunk. He was a nice bloke, always said hello and smiled. We knew him only as Ray. Now Ray was about 60, but fit, not big, just a normal looking guy. A few forearm tattoos, pretty standard for the north of England in the 90s. One Saturday afternoon, me and 4 of my friends were having our usual couple of drinks. As it was Saturday, there was a football match on. 3 inches away, fans walk into the pub. Already a brave move, but this is a friendly place. Everyone eyes them suspiciously but carries on drinking. They walk to the bar and immediately start being horrible to the barmaid, making lewd comments, complaining loudly about the beer, etc. Ray looks at these 3 guys and says, "No need to be rude, boys. She's here to do a job." Cue a stream of verbal abuse from the away fans. "Shut the fuck up, granddad. What you gonna do about it?" etc. The regulars are having none of this. Everyone, me included, stands up and stares at these idiots. Ray turns to everyone and just says, "Sit down, lads. I'll deal with this." Turns to the away fans, "You 3. Outside. Now." These 3 guys, obviously they're for a fight anyway. All, "Fucking come on then, granddad. Let's go." They all walk out of the bar. And not 20 seconds later, Ray walks back in, without a word, sits back on his stool and sips his half of bitter. Curiosity got the better of us, so we all ran outside to see complete carnage. 2 guys out cold on the pavement. One on his backside with blood pouring out of his nose. It turns out that Ray was ex-sass, and the barmaid was his daughter. Working in an auto parts warehouse, one of our managers was a very quiet, collected person. One particular day some of the orders were wrong and the ordering system was malfunctioning. He calmly goes out back, starts up a forklift and rams it full speed at a huge stack of wood pallets. He must have thrown it in reverse and repeated this about a dozen times, raising and lowering the forks appropriately. Everyone stopped working to watch as every last pallet was destroyed. When there was only a pile of wood scraps left, he turned off the lift and calmly walked back in and continued working as if nothing happened. Gym class in high school. The quiet nerdy kid kept getting picked on during dodgeball. One jerk kept hitting him with balls even when he was already out. The quiet kid wasn't tiny. He was about average sized, maybe a little taller than average. He eventually lost his temper, ran across the court, and literally delivered a double-handed chokeslam to the jerk. Being a bunch of teenage boys, we all lost our shit cheering for him. He got suspended for 3 days, but it was reduced to 1 day in school after a bunch of us went to principal and explained the circumstances. When I was in high school, an upperclassman at my all-male student Catholic school followed a female teacher into the bathroom and tried to rape her. She screamed initially before he pulled a knife on her. The gentlest, most caring, socially awkward Latin teacher heard the scream and rushed from his classroom straight into the women's restroom. He clocked this kid across the face and dragged him out by his collar into the hall. Then he checked on traumatized female teacher. Later, he just went back to class and continued teaching as though nothing happened. Dude knows 7 languages, has never dated anyone, and is a brilliant, always calm man. People gained a lot of respect for him after that day. He's still really weird though. Twice in 20 years I've seen the fury of my very patient, docile and kind stepdad. The first time was when some 12th graders chased my brother and cousin all the way from school to our backyard, threatening their lives with pocket knives. Stepdad calmly walked to the backyard, grabbed the big kids by their throats and lifted them up, pinning them to the fence. "Stay the hell away from my kids," was all he said, in a calm, teeth-biting kind of way. The kids booked it faster than I've ever seen anyone run and never bugged my brother or cousin again. Then we all went inside and made burgers. The second time was in my angsty preteen years when I called my mother a bitch. He turned at me and I've never been so scared in my life. This time he was right pissed and screamed at me until I was backed up against our bar counter, shielding myself with the bar stool legs. The second he backed off slightly, I booked it into my bedroom and barricaded myself in with all the furniture I could find. Didn't come out for a solid day until I got up the courage to apologize. But he's a teddy bear. Normally. My dad. About a decade ago while I was in high school, we lived on a hill. And if you go down the hill it leads into the main part of town where all the shops and stuff are. And if you go up, over the other side it's where a lot of the bars and clubs are. It's quicker to go over than around obviously. Back then my parents each had a car instead of sharing one and only one space in the garage. And drunk idiots were constantly damaging Mom's car. Well, one night Dad happened to have a day off fall on the weekend. And he could hear a group of drunk people walking up the road. His little office computer room is at the very front of the house. So he gets up, goes out the front door and just waits near the front lawn, watching. They're being loud and pushing each other around. Mom's worried as fuck and comes to get me because she doesn't want him to get hurt by some drunk idiot. And I go out to see what he's doing. They end up pushing each other around more. and one bumps into the car, is leaning on it, and the hood of the car. Dad tells them to get away from it. They start taunting him, so he walks closer toward them, and one of the little bastards clean smashes the side mirror off while laughing at him. Dad is a 6'8" ex-basketballer. Basically is just all around fucking huge and is small man bait on a normal day. Dad hit him straight in the jaw, and you could see as his jaw completely broke. Guy is immediately screaming and bawling his eyes out at the same time, while his friends pick him up and run away. Never heard from them again, or got in any trouble for it. Dad just went back inside and watched TV. I worked with this theater director who was well known for being one of the nicest and most intelligent people you can meet, but there was one actor in this show who was a great pain in the asshole. She would constantly be late for rehearsals. Once she didn't show up at all. The reason was her girlfriend was in a car accident. But the problem was she didn't tell the stage manager, director, or anyone she wasn't coming. We found out through Facebook. This was a show with some deaf cast members, and some hearing actors who didn't know ASL had to do some signing. So we brought in an ASL instructor. This woman though, did know some ASL and thought she knew better than the college professor and would constantly try to correct her. We were doing spacing rehearsal in one of our touring spaces, with very limited time. This is 2 months into the rehearsal process and the director has finally had enough of her having a backhanded comment for everything. He adjusts her blocking slightly, just because the space we're in is a bit different. She starts to say something and the director just screams, "The show isn't about you. Goddamn it," and he throws his script to the ground so that pages fly everywhere. It's the first time any of us have ever heard him yell or curse in anger. She runs off stage crying. Then he calmly says, "Can we get back to work please?" And then later, during a break, I overhear him talking to her about how he is going to tell everyone he knows in theater never to hire her or work with her. I knew a girl who was living with a guy who had a severe anger management issue. He had kept it under control for the few years they had lived together. But one day he snapped over some minor issue, hit her repeatedly, banged her face in the concrete and tried to choke her until a passery stopped him. So, obviously, the relationship was over, and she was going to fetch her stuff from the apartment. She, likewise obviously, didn't want to go alone. So me, 2 other friends and her brother, who I also knew, tagged along to keep things in check and to help carry stuff. When we arrive, her ex gives us attitude, which causes her normally extremely mild and docile brother to snap completely. He smacked the guy up against the wall with one hand, and punched him repeatedly with the other, holding him up against the wall all the time. Because you don't hit someone who is down. We just stood there in shock and awe, given the way the girl looked after the beating she had received. Black and blue, bruised, her entire face scraped, choke marks around the neck and so on. We didn't mind much what was going on, and just let him punch him out. Then, we got her stuff and left as he started to wake up. 2 times during the following months. The ex was jumped twice when moving outdoors in the evening. I don't know who did it, and I don't want to know. I guess everybody has their trigger. My Phil is such a patient man. He's quiet, reserved, has a great sense of humor. When my Mill lets him get any words in, my Mill talks a lot. She will ask you questions and when you start to answer she talks over you and tries to answer them herself. It's infuriating and obnoxious. One time she asked me a question and I started to answer her and she cut me off to basically finish my answer for me and starts to ask another question. Lather, rinse, repeat for about 4 questions. Finally my patient, quiet, sits back and watches the world. Phil just explodes on her basically screaming at her. Mill, oh my god, let her actually answer the question you asked. Stop interrupting. You never let anyone finish their thought. It was glorious and I almost tackled him to hug him. She still does it but that day was amazing. My dad was career Army as an officer. I have always known him as a soft-spoken, kind, never gets angry kind of person. He rarely ever raises his voice that I know of. There is a law in the US that basically protects any service member nearing 20 years from being forced out so they can get full retirement benefits. One day he gets a call from his commanding general telling him that he is going to be forced put due to budget cuts Army-wide. He got up out of his seat and started yelling at the general on the phone that it was impossible due to the law since he was in the safe zone. He started quoting section after section yelling at the general telling him he had fucked up and that it better be fixed. A few days later my dad got a call again from the general. And the first thing the general said was, "Before you say anything, let me apologize for the other day. You were 100% correct. But budget cuts are budget cuts." And as soon as my dad hit 20 years he was retired. I laughed. My dad has the patience of a saint. You never see him get angry or pissed off. He's quiet, calm and so laid back. Pretty much like me. Even when we were kids he never gave us a telling off at all. It was always Mum's job as she was strict. Anyway, we were at the dinner table and me and my siblings were all bickering. Not sure about what. All of a sudden my dad slams his fists on the table and shouts, "Shut up." We all put out heads down in shock, as we never experienced this before. One by one, we started to giggle. Even our mom started giggling. We looking over to my dad who was looking down at his plate. And all we could see was his shoulders going up and down. And of course he just burst out laughing. I think he shocked himself that day. But no one could take it seriously. Back in uni, one guy the first knew on greeting and small talk terms but not much more. Was known as the literal rock against the waves. Childish freshmen picked on him for being retarded at all. For ages and he just shrugged it off. You need to imagine him as a gentle giant. 6 feet 9-ish and arms as thick as my thigh. But very sweet and lovable. Hobbies included caring for shelter kitties and posting reviews for oddly specific music theory books online. I eventually became friends with him and we hung out sometimes, grabbing a coffee and such. And one day, we were avidly discussing something when 3 of the childish freshmen came by and pestered him. He informed them twice that we were currently talking and they should not disturb us. Please and thank you, with foreseeable success. So he just shrugged and tried to continue our talk over their pestering. Frustrated that they did not succeed, one of them resorted to the last straw of a childish bully and called his mother a whore. Fun fact, his mother died when he was 14 and he never fully came to terms with it. He took a deep breath, stood up, and grabbed the offender by his head, swinging him like a club at the others and kicking them into next Tuesday when they all were on the ground, before I and 2 others finally could pull him off. And he instantly calmed down. TL, Dr. Gentle Giant from uni snapped and literally beat a motherfucker with another motherfucker. I once was playing soccer on a local school area. After 8 p.m. the gates are closing, so we just agreed that we were going to leave after 8 p.m. Because as was an honest kid. Age 11. When it was like 7:59 a friend of mine kicked the ball on the roof. Not on purpose. Of the school. Note, this was my brand new ball so I really wanted it back. So I climbed on the roof of the school. But this was kinda hard so it took longer than the 1 minute I had before the gates were closing. I finally got my ball but by this time it already was 8:15. That's when I spotted my local police officer. I don't know the English word. A police office that only has a specific block. I know this guy because you know he's the policeman from my block. He started shouting my name that I need to get off that roof now because I was trespassing. So I panicked because a policeman was shouting at me. I climbed down the roof and the policeman told me that I was trespassing and that is against the law. I told him I just wanted my new ball and that I planned to get out of the gates at 8 p.m. But this guy was old and grumpy so he asked for an ID card. Being 11, and in Holland the minimal age for an ID card is ~12~14. I didn't have an ID card. So this MF took me to the local jail. So at this point me and 3 friends are sitting in a 2x2 jail cell. It had 144 bricks, 62 glass bricks, a metal door and a bed. No sheets. I'll never forget those numbers. So another agent started asking questions about a series of burglaries and we just stood there. With a WTF we are 11 years old mate face. So the policeman said, well if you're not going to talk I guess we need to call your parents. The 4 of us were like, fuck. Finally, we asked for this the first time you took us here. Well we were crying. I won't lie. So I guess 20 minutes later I hear some noise in the distance. An older guy yelling to an officer. We were like, who could this be? Note, I grew up in a strict Christian family. Turned out it was my father yelling at the whole stations to release us because we were just playing soccer and that those policemen were freaking stupid. To think a group of 11-year-old was responsible for a series of burglaries. That was the first and last time I heard my dad say some swear words. Not the last, but a notable one. Kid at my school. Was the 3rd tallest kid in the school. But definitely the biggest, probably 6 feet 6. But really overweight. A little shit who had bullied loads of kids for years decided to pick on him outside of history, which was on the top floor of the school. This guy is barely 5 foot tall. If that. And no one liked him. Big kid wasn't the most popular guy in school or anything. But he wasn't a bully and was well enough liked. So 5 feet is there yelling at 6 feet 6 the usual garbage. You're a pussy. You suck dick. Fucking packy scum, that kind of stuff. Everyone is pointedly ignoring him. Then he actually hits him. 6 feet 6 ahead turns slowly towards him. It's like watching a golem come to life in a movie. 5 feet is there in standard young man boxing stance. 6 feet 6 just reaches over, grabs him by his head and then his belt and lifts him up above his head as 5 feet struggles. 6 feet 6 walks over to the spiral staircase, which goes all the way to the bottom of the school. 4 floors down. 5 feet realizes what is about to happen and just goes quiet. 6 feet 6 throws him down the stairs. We all rush to watch as he tumbles down flight after flight, finally stopping, unconscious, at the feet of our deputy head. A really nice guy actually, who was just about to come up from the basement level. Deputy head gets the nurse and kid is taken away, presumably to hospital, but I don't know. He wasn't seriously injured, unbelievably, but very badly bruised. Deputy head comes up to where we are all still standing, about 20 or so of us. Says, did anyone see what happened here? Student, I didn't see who. Pipes up. 5, tripped and fell down the stairs. Sure. Everyone nods agreement. 6 feet 6 was still in school a few days after and people got expelled from our school for much less. So I guess 5 feet kept his mouth shut. The insults he was throwing would have gotten him expelled or at least suspended too. And he'd been suspended before. So probably the former. So yeah, maybe don't pick on guys with around 4 times your body mass. even if they seem quiet. Edit. For the people saying that throwing him down the stairs was too extreme. Here are a few points. 1. I'm pretty certain he didn't mean to throw him down 3 flights of stairs. Our spiral staircases were those sort of square spirals, with only about 7 steps aside. He looked as surprised as everyone when 5 feet didn't just stop at the first wall, but bounced off and kept on rolling. 2. The guy was an unrepentant prick. Even after this incident, which was not the first time he had been beat down. I myself knocked him on his ass 3 years previous after he had tormented me non-stop for a year and a half. This guy was in my form. And in the first 2 years of school that meant I had every lesson with him. I was forced to be in class with this asshole all day. Every day. He abused me and lots of other kids. Verbally and physically. He robbed people, vandalized their stuff and generally got away with it without much more than the odd detention. Normally with whoever he was tormenting dragged along for the ride because the teachers generally didn't care, or were pricks themselves. He wouldn't stop at people from our year either. He would attack the younger kids, spit at the teachers, vandalize school property, everything. If 6'6" hadn't thrown him down the staircase, it was only a matter of minutes before someone else knocked his teeth out. Racism wasn't tolerated much in our school. By the students at least 3. At this point he was 15/16 of a year old. We had all been through the motions. We'd reported him to teachers, which generally got either no results or got us punished for telling stories, or told to man up. I for one had actually been taken to see the deputy head mentioned at one point after a fight. The deputy head asked me what had caused the fight with another, different bully, and told him everything that had been happening. He had nodded his head and told me he would make sure the bullies would leave me alone. I thought this would mean they would get some kind of suspended sentence deal. Like, if you bully him again, we'll suspend you, but it actually meant talking to them for like 2 minutes to the tune of, stop it. It's not nice. The only thing that stopped him tormenting me was a swift right hook when I happened to walk into an empty corridor and catch him coming out of the gents. Alone in the corridor with no teachers around, he looked up at me and opened his mouth to say something and I knocked him on his ass, giving him a nosebleed. For the record, I didn't make a quip. I didn't kick him whilst he was down and I didn't feel good about it. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't feel I had beaten the bully. I spent the next 2 weeks in constant fear of being jumped by him and some of his friends. I didn't realize at the time he only had one and he was smaller than him and also a pretty nice guy. After a year and a half of constant harassment and physical abuse, one punch didn't really repair any of the damage. Either way, he didn't bother me hardly at all after that. This also worked with the other ones, though it almost got me expelled. But that's another story. Basically what I'm saying is, the options open to 6'6" were stand there and let a tiny bully scream abuse at him and hit him. Or fight back. So yeah, if you're sitting there still thinking, kids will be kids, or, sure he was mean, but he didn't deserve that. Understand that he was back at school a few days later. A little sore but still swearing at people. I can still remember the abuse. Still feel the kicks and the taunts. I was not the only kid he bullied. One kid had to leave the school. His abuse was that bad. This stuff stays with you. Edit 2. Just a quick one for the people saying 6'6" could have gone to jail for the rest of his life. Quote. 2 things wrong with that statement. 1. No one except a load of people who hated Five's guts and felt ambivalent towards 6'6" were present. And pretty much everyone up there would have been a suspect. Myself included. 2. We just saw this guy pick a guy up by his head and throw him down 3 flights of stairs.